Okay, George, Megalopolis.
Here we go.
Bear with me while I try and describe the plot of Megalopolis. And if you're going to criticize, I dare you to do the same.
Time, stop.
Megalopolis, Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis,
Yes.
a film that he has apparently been trying to make since 1979 after he finished Apocalypse Now. A film which is known for having had Apocalypse Now, a very troubled production. But despite all odds, George, he pushed through and he made it. It was make or break.
Yeah.
I've got to make this film, and it worked out in one of the greatest films of all time, depending on how you count. Some people absolutely love Apocalypse Now. And the story about this film is that he's been trying to make it since then. No one has given him the green light to do it, and he wanted to self-fund it. And the story is that he liquidated around the sum of $120 million worth of his own assets in the form of his own wine vineyard to self-fund this movie so that nobody would have to tell him what to do or how to do it. And the result of this is Megalopolis. It's got a stacked cast that would make the likes of Wes Anderson purr.
Yep.
And it is all about a man played by Adam Driver called Caesar Catalina, who lives in a version of America called New Rome, which is similar to New York. Reminds me a little bit of stylized versions of Gotham City. The kind of versions of it were a little bit exaggerated and steampunky. He plays Caesar Catalina, who is a genius artist architect who has this vision of creating a utopian, idealistic future of the city, and he's leveling blocks to create this new version of the city. But against him is Giancarlo Esposito's Cicero, who is the mayor of that town, who is sort of opposing him politically as they're trying to rally favor with the public. His daughter, played by Natalie Emmanuel, Julia Cicero, develops a relationship with Caesar and ends up working for him, and there's also a romantic thing there. You've got Aubrey Plaza, who plays, Wow Platinum, who's a media professional, but who's also trying to climb a social ladder within politics. He probably comes out some of the better of these stars. You've got Shia LaBeouf, you've got Chloe Fineman, you've got Jon Voight, Dustin Hoffman. I could go on. The plot. There's also this. He's building this new utopian city with this special material called megalon, and that also seemingly has given him the ability to freeze time. And he operates in the roof of the Chrysler Building, and there's this famous shot where he sort of looks down over at the megalopolis and pause time, elongated sequences. I don't really know what else you need to know with Megalopolis.
I think it's worth just saying that, like, when the production actually started, Coppola apparently was very liberating to his actors, they say, in the terms of a lot of improvisation, a lot of allowing actors to take things in their own direction. This actually frustrated a lot of the production. A lot of people in like the art department, the production side of it, left the production because of it. A lot of drama there. But we finally get it. And some people have said, like, I'm really glad he got to make the film he wanted to make, and I'm really going to do that. I don't really know where to start with Megalopolis. I'm just going to start by saying this movie is terrible. It is terrible.
Awful.
It's awful. Unbelievably awful. And actually, getting annoyed and wound up and exasperated by it is a little bit kind of passé now, because the whole internet and everyone who's seen it says the same thing, and it is there. And I've seen some people trying to take some sort of redeeming takes on it, but it is terrible. And it's terrible because it is one of the most incomprehensible, inarticulate movies I've ever seen. And it is bizarre coming from Francis Ford Coppola, who in the 70s made 4 great movies, okay? 2 Godfathers, Conversation, Apocalypse Now. And you have this weird thing with... Megalopolis is now going to change the story about the legacy of Francis Ford Coppola. Totally. It's a total 180 spectrum thing where you say he made what is often regarded as one of the greatest films of all time.
It's not just not as good as his other films. It's
objectively one of the worst films I think I've ever seen. It is absolutely terrible. Inarticulate, incomprehensible. Just I watched the film with this expression on my face of complete bafflement. At why am I seeing this? Why has this been put in front of people? I kept thinking this is not fit for audience consumption. Never before has there been as we talked about on Double Take this week, an ironic championing of the studio system. In the making of The Godfather, Bob Evans at Paramount, who's like a legendary producer, the spirit of Bob Evans is probably turning in his grave, because never before has there been an example of where you needed a producer to say, no, no, Francis, we don't need to have that. No, thank you. The dialogue is, it reminded me a lot of the time of watching a bad screen adaptation of a Shakespeare play you don't know, where the dialogue is clunky and cumbersome and awkward.
Or a condensed Edinburgh student play.
Oh, God. And it feels... If you were being kind, I would say it feels like Francis Ford Coppola trying to describe a dream he once had.
Yeah.
But and in a way, it is. It's a $120 million version of Francis Ford Coppola telling you a dream he had 45 years ago. And it's awful, though. It's really, really terrible and insufferable, actually. A real slog to get through. Don't go see it and think, oh, I'll rub my hands, I'll go see it. I think it's terrible.
No, I actually think it's not even worth, oh, this is bad. I want to see it intellectually to be part of the conversation. It is astonishingly bad. Like, listen to us.
Yeah.
Do not waste.
Yeah.
I think we were lucky this film was only 2 hours and 25 minutes.
Yes, yeah.
We could have easily got another hour on this. Like, you will never, ever get that time back. Yeah. And I promise you, it is so, so bad. It's astonishingly bad. I completely agree. I think it's actually much more of a spoof of cinema than it is cinema itself. It's so intolerable and dull. There were 4 people in my screening, and some of the scenes in like the second half were so bad we were just laughing. That was the only way I could maintain any sort of joy out of it, was just to laugh. But it's actually just very funny. It's shallow. It makes, you know what's annoying about the film as well is that it sneers a lot at like the Hollywood entertainment industry for being pretentious and sort of like over the top, when actually this is the most overindulgent and pretentious piece of entertainment I've ever seen.
Yes, but also as well, like it sneers at entertainment as somehow being sort of base and shallow. You know, like when they're trying to build this like Atlantic City style place in the center. And I'm like, but you've forgotten that. For me, ultimately, cinema and film, my take on it, it's a dialogue with the person that you are making. You're in dialogue with your audience, okay? Now, Francis Ford Coppola has clearly thought, I want to make the film I want to make, and how people react to it is fine. And I think you have made the film you wanted to make. It is like watching you pleasure yourself on screen. And I don't want to watch Francis Ford Coppola pleasure himself on screen for 2 hours 20. He can put it on in the family screening room. We can get all the other Coppolas. You can get Jason Schwartzman and Talia Shire and Nicolas Cage to come and sit and watch it. But frankly, do not bore me with this, and do not forget the fact that you are asking people to not only give money but their time to this. It's just it's offensive how bad it is.
And annoyingly, it's going to become the poster child for boardroom corporate involvement in creativity, because people are going to, well, look what happens when you don't have sensible, non-creative, unemotionally involved heads switched onto the film. And
it's also the cheapest looking $120 movie I've ever seen.
And just on like the actors involved, I'm like, it's like, you know, Adam Driver, unfortunately for him, is that he plays the lead role and he's at the center of most of the film, and the plot mostly revolves around him. You know, I've seen him now in House of Gucci, 65, Ferrari, and it's quite a few times where I've said, you know, I really like Adam Driver as an actor. I think he's obviously really talented and he gives 110% to everything he does, but it's just not quite worked here. And especially when you see him doing Hamlet and To Be or Not to Be and Shakespeare and the sequences that just seemingly go nowhere. Unfortunately, I just think it's really not done him any favors here. And I feel like I can really see his brain trying to make sense of this. I can see him acting. And I do still think he's a very good actor, but I just think it's a really bad move for him to have done this. And I'd love to know what the story was, but more stories behind the production. Like, I'd love to know if these guys realized on what day of production that they were going to be in an absolute stinger. Because that's not a film that's sort of, it's come out really badly. They must have known when they were making it that this would be an absolute clusterfuck.
And also, it's like bad films get made all the time, but this film has been kind of thrust upon people because somebody with enough wealth and cultural cachet has been able to throw his weight behind it and get stars involved. Yeah. And I'm like, this really is terrible. When I mentioned that it's inarticulate, I really mean like scenes just sort of end and are elliptical.
Just go.
Plots are kind of dropped and brought in, and it's just dense, incomprehensible.
You're just waffling
nonsense.
through, and you'll come blink, and then you're an hour later in the movie, and you still don't know what's going on.
It's like
doesn't know what it is.
It's like you've accidentally sat down with Francis Ford Coppola and he's maybe 5 glasses of red deep at a party, and he wants to really tell you about the state of the world and what he thinks about it.
It's the Roman Empire, but it's obviously America.
And you think, oh God, have I got to? Oh, thanks, Francis, but I think I've got to go. But yeah, the sad thing,
screen looks terrible.
It looks terrible, and that's the thing. The sad thing is that this legacy now, this sort of 50-year career that Coppola has had. It's like you made some of the best movies that are still regarded as some of the best movies of all time in the 70s, and now you've made one of the worst movies of all time, objectively one of the best movies of all time. And then that's why I mentioned Double Take about, got me thinking about his contemporaries, got me thinking about Scorsese and Spielberg and Lucas, even, for goodness sake. And like Lucas, I think, realized quite early on that he's not a great filmmaker, so he decided to turn his creativity into other ways. Scorsese and Spielberg are still delivering excellent work.
And don't kid yourself by thinking that, like The Room, we're going to be able to able to laugh at it down the line, and we're going to jeer it. I don't think this has that quality where we could enjoy it for how bad it is. It is just, unfortunately, dull beyond belief.
I mean, it does feel a little bit. It's a humanist version of The Room, but it is like, it's Francis Ford Coppola's The Room, a great mistake, a great giant mistake. I'm sorry. And like, it's so funny because last week we reviewed Joker 2 and Wolves, which we said were really dull and boring. Yeah. I would watch those movies 10 times
I'd rather watch them 10 times a week for the rest of my life than have to watch that film. Honestly, it is so bad. It's probably the worst one I've ever seen. I'm really struggling to think of something that's bad in that way, to that extent, all round, all the way through.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's rotten to the core.
I think this movie's rotten right to the core. Don't go see it. Anyway, Megalopolis.
And we covered it on Double Take. It's made no money. It's made $4 million in its opening weekend, which is catastrophic.
Some people, again, like to respect the fact that he's been able to pull it off, but I'm like, no, it's not, because for what? For what? To insult the audience, to pleasure yourself on screen.
He's taken good actors' time away from other things. Yeah. There's an actor like Adam Driver gets scripts every month. Yeah. He will have rejected a project, a probably better project, to do that film.
I also wonder where Coppola goes from here. I think he's 82 or something in his life.
Exactly,
I'm like, what are you going to make now? Because you've you've burnt through your cash. You've also burnt through your cultural cachet. You are washed up.
Totally. Yeah, he's ruined himself.
Sorry, but I mean, I want to be respectful, but the whole thing has that whiff of male ego about it. You know, I'm going to make my film. And also, there is a kind of swaggering awkwardness to it. There's that line Adam Driver says about, of course I like girls. Who doesn't like girls? You know?
And the sex scene between Aubrey Plaza and Shia LaBeouf was just wildly gratuitous and overly sexualized for no reason. We never come back to it. And I'm like, you're just leering over just filming a gross sex scene where Aubrey Plaza sits on Shia LaBeouf's face, and it's like, okay, but why have you made it this sexual? What about like the raw sexualized humanity between these two characters needs to be unpacked in this film, and when are you going to revisit it? Never.
It's also sorry, we will finish. It's amazing to realize how to recognize you're watching such a bad film so early on. It's like the first scene.
There are some bad films you realize, maybe like half an hour towards the end, this isn't going to come together. Some films about halfway through. Some films within 20 minutes. This film is unique because immediately I knew it was bad. Yes, I'd heard it was bad, but like immediately I knew. I'm like, oh my God, this is as bad. It actually was worse than what people told me.
It's an experience, but not one I wish people to repeat.
No, and I don't go, we should go see
James
it for a
laugh.
James
and I hadn't spoken about whether or not we'd planned to catch both of the films this week, and but I hadn't checked with whether James had. And if I'd got here today and you said, I didn't get a chance to see it, I would say, fine, don't see it. Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
You take those 2.5 hours.
You spend it well, buddy. Yeah. Rubbish.
Absolutely awful.
The rant I went on when I came home. I couldn't stop. I just couldn't believe what I'd seen.
It's unbelievable. There you go, guys. If you had anything else to say that we didn't already cover, or I don't know, hello@pulpkitchenpodcast.com. We'll read out your thoughts, opinions on the show. Unbelievably atrocious.
Terrible.
That's it. We know what the low is now.
Yes,
I don't think
the bottom. We
forever
bottom.
now can go, well, of course, there's Megalopolis. So we'll never.
I was thinking about some of the more the films at the bottom end I've seen this year, right?
Yeah,
like Argyle, awful.
Yeah.
Kinds of Kindness, insufferable. Wolves, boring.
Yeah.
Joker 2, boring.
Hunger Games, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes annoyed me, but I'd much rather watch that again.
Five Nights with Freddy's, terrible movie, but adheres to the rules of narrative cinema in a way that functions better than this.
It's the equivalent of like finding a drunk man on the street and asking him to
give him $120 million.
give him 120 million quid and say, can you please write and direct a film? It's unbelievable.
We must move on.
We must move on.